Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our watch club for Andor. Don't you want to fight these bastards for real? Welcome to Watch Club. My name is Nate, and this is our Watch Club for Disney and Lucasfilm's Andor, episodes 1 to 3, directed by Toby Haynes. Special thanks, as always, to our friends at Lucasfilm and Disney Plus Canada for inviting us to watch these episodes early for review and for us to be able to get this Watch Club out right on time. If you're joining us for the first time, well, this is Watch Club, our weekly review series, kind of like a book club, but way better. Keep in mind, we will be going to full spoilers for this series and Star Wars in general. So if you haven't watched this week's episodes yet, be sure to do so. Watch all 3, and then come right back in less than 12 parsecs. Now, before we start a revolution, let me introduce you to the Rebel Spies joining me today. First up, he's my Rebel Spy, who's pretty fly for a Sky guy. He's Justin Lobot Lawrence.
Howdy, howdy. How are ya?
Is that how Lobot? You think Lobot would say howdy, howdy?
I feel like a Lobot would say howdy, howdy. I think that's right. If it's a Lobot that's like me, for sure.
There you
100%. It's no B2 emo, but it's,
Sure. A Lobot, maybe like a Lobot at a brothel. He's just getting a little drunk off some oil or something.
Sure. Let's go with that. Let's go with
that. And joining us in our fight against the Empire, we have a Rebel Spy who can break a Melu Run fruit between his dry thighs while munching on some pork belly pie. He's Kevin Hosnian Prime Hudson.
All of a sudden, I sound like a spectacle at a brothel. But of course, it's all for the greater good. For the greater good.
Absolutely. Kevin, we would use you. We'd get some Melu Run fruit and put them between your dry thighs, and we would just tell all the ISB officers, hey, look over there. Look over there while we steal all the plans for the Death Star. I think that's how they did it. How are you guys doing tonight? I'm so stoked that we finally get to talk about this show in spoilers. You know, Justin and I, for us, it's been over a month now that we first got to watch these first 4 episodes of Andor, and then there was the delay that happened. And we've kind of just been sitting with our thoughts on the series. And so I don't know, man. Like, I'm just like, there's so much to go over. But like, I was like just waiting. I was counting down the days till we could actually talk about it. And thankfully, we'll get to talk about it in this Watch Club. And we got to talk a little bit off air with yourself, Kevin, and Darcy during the spoiler-free recording.
I mean, I saw these 3 days ago, and I've been chomping at the bit. So I can't imagine the unenviable task that you guys have had sitting on it, just waiting to get to share. And it's exciting just knowing that right around the corner it's going to drop. And I'm just so curious to see how people respond to this show.
Yeah, well, you've already responded to the show with your thoughts probably on social media. If you're listening to this by now, again, this is going to be spoiler filled for the first 3 episodes. We're not going to be talking at all. We're not even going to be thinking or pondering about the 4th episode. We are only focused on the first 3 episodes for this Watch Club. And going forward, obviously this show is so different for Star Wars. It is such a different pace. It's a different, everything is different about it. So you're going to notice, if you've listened to our Watch Clubs before, you're going to notice these Watch Clubs are also going to be a bit different. We're going to kind of maybe take some time and these first 3 episodes very much feel like they are one singular arc. I have a feeling that 4, 5, and 6 might feel that way, and going forward, we might start to see these episodes maybe better discussed in groups of 2 or 3. So going forward, we will be probably releasing these episodes after maybe a couple of weeks to 2 to 3 weeks at a time. Okay? All right. Well, listen, we have so much to go over for this week's Watch Club, with getting 3 episodes debuting today on Disney Plus as of this episode's release. So let's get into it. I want to start with the score, and we kind of touched upon the music in our spoiler-free. The opening title sequence is so different from others that we've gotten so far. What did you think of, even just the title of like Andor just appearing slowly on the screen while we hear Nicholas Britell's, various themes to the show?
Yeah, no, I think the music is of its own character. It definitely stands out. It's very personal. It's very intimate. It's very soft and less obvious, very much like this entire series in being conventional Star Wars music. And I think we'll hear more of that as we go throughout the episodes. But Yeah, I think, again, because so much of Star Wars is built on the scores and the music that we hear, here we have something that's a little less obvious, a little more subtle. And I'm interested to see as we get further if that changes, if the level of intensity on that opening title sequence, if the song changes, given the stakes as the episodes evolve.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I mean, even watching in the first 3 episodes, the music changes each time, but with no matter what though, it always starts the same and ends the same. It has this crescendo. It starts very soft and then picks up and gets louder and louder. And I feel like that's also very fitting for, very much where we see we'll see the pace of this show pick up and things are going to get more and more off the rails. So I think, it's going to get louder as we go further into this conflict. And I love how they sort of match that tone right off the start. But let's keep going here. Let's get right into our first episode. Our first 3 episodes, of course, as I mentioned, directed by Toby Haynes. And episode 1 starts off on Morlana 1 in the Preox Morlana corporate zone 5 years before the Battle of Yavin. So this is 5 years before A New Hope, I guess. Yeah? Is that what we're saying? Yes. We see Cassian walking through the rain towards a corporate bar and pleasure house after some heckling from 2 sentry guards named Kravis and Verlo. Cassian informs the hostess that he's looking for his sister from Kenari. She tells him there was a girl from Kenari here months ago, but she disappeared. And then she's like, and you should also leave because you asked that. I don't know. She's got weirdly suspicious of him in that moment. First of all, do we think that the girl working at the brothel was indeed his sister, or do you think it could have been, someone else from Kenari?
That's a hard question to answer without getting further into this episode, but I would say that I don't see why he would lie about it.
I guess because he's also saying that she's from Kenari as well. I'm thinking, yeah, it definitely is his sister. He's kind of in a situation in that moment where he has nothing to lose in that moment. Like he's on his own. I feel like this whole aspect of him searching for his sister is something that it's only been his journey. He's never really, brought it up to anyone or even some of his closest, friends and somewhat family, in that we see in this show. So I think it is a little bit personal for him. I thought it was weird, even just seeing a brothel in Star Wars.
That's the real question here. What is it like to see a brothel in Star Wars? It's like right off the bat, here's your mature Star Wars or adult Star Wars, as you guys were saying in the spoiler free. It's blatantly a brothel. That's bold. I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's still not, we're not going to get sexual innuendo.
Yeah,
we're not going to get any of that, right? And so I think a young person watching this would have no idea that was a brothel.
Yeah, 100%.
It would just seem like a bar, a cantina. But it's subtle enough that we can pick up on it. Again, so while we talked about in the spoiler-free show about how the show is definitely geared to a more mature, more adult fan base, they're still doing it in such a way that anybody could watch this.
Yeah, and I will say, again, it's definitely not explicit, but I think the closest thing we've gotten so far would be Twi'leks or Leia in the golden bikini when she was enslaved by Jabba. Those are kind of things. Or I guess the only other sort of comparison I can make would be the concepts of spice and how they talk about spice and how that's very clearly drugs in the Star Wars universe. So it's interesting, but yeah, it was like, okay, we're okay. It's, there's ladies coming up to him and saying that they want to, anyways, it just was interesting. It's a weird thing to see in Star Wars. So after failing to secure more information, he promptly leaves. The 2 sentry guards follow him and request to see his corpo ID. Cassian makes them think he's going to pay them off until he headbutts Verlo and slams Kravis into the ground, disarming him. He holds Kravis at gunpoint and demands him to get Verlo up off the ground. However, they both discover that Verlo isn't breathing. Kravis pleads for his life, saying, "We'll go in together, but it's too late." Cassian has already made up his mind, and he shoots him in cold blood without a thought. He makes his escape off the planet. So obviously this is the spark that lights the fuse for the entire these first 3 episodes, for kind of seeing Cassian cover his tracks. What did you think of this dark moment for our rebel protagonist?
Well, I think it was to be expected, right? Like, I kind of already read the scene. Like, we forget, like, when we first were introduced to Cassian Andor in Rogue One, he very much did the same thing. He eliminated stormtroopers, but he also eliminated the informant that he was getting information from. To see it happen here in a sort of accidental situation, I think that really is a testament to kind of what this show is about. It's not about good or bad. It's about the gray. It's about surviving. It's about the idea of protecting yourself in this galaxy at this time of when things are really, shit's hitting the fan. So I think in many ways, this one sequence of events and moment from the brothel into this really does highlight how, again, mature, but also real in the sense of focusing on the people of the galaxy and the impact these events are having on them.
Yeah, and I certainly think that, his actions to start off Rogue One are even more questionable or shady than here. These guys are shaking him down, going to take him for every penny he has, and they're doing so at gunpoint. I mean, and he's just doing what he has to do to survive and to get out of this situation. So I have no qualms with what he's done here to sort of protect himself. Obviously he's broken universal law here in Thou Shalt Not Kill, but I think he was very much in a kill or be killed situation. I mean, I'm not sure these guys had the guts to actually pull a trigger, but they put themselves in this situation. They asked for it, as far as I'm concerned. So, it's unfortunate that a pesky little brown noser is gonna take this the wrong way and start an investigation.
And that sentiment, Kevin, is going to come up later when we meet another character. That exact sentiment of, well, they got themselves into that trouble. And he's not wrong, because at the end of the day, Andor was just protecting himself. He's protecting his own identity. Because again, more to kind of unravel as we get through this episode, but he's already in a sense of hiding, right? So I think that he's trying to cover his tracks and make sure no one finds him.
But I thought this was such, to start the series off with this moment was what really hit me. And I think it's so strong. I think it's such an interesting moment because you see how quickly Cassian's mind has to work. And that's such, Diego Luna being able to portray that without any words, the way that his eyes dart back and forth, and you see his mind working to justify what he's doing in that moment, and just how quickly Kravis turns and starts begging for his life, like such a coward, and it just shows these lower Imperial forces, they act tough, but they don't know how dangerous the resistance can actually be. And that's a huge theme as well that we're going to see throughout, is this sort of underestimation of the enemy. And I think that's huge. That's a huge advantage for our resistance. But you're right, Justin. It did remind me a lot of the moment with Cassian killing Tivik, who's the spy who tells him about the planet killer in Rogue One. But in that scene, I think he's kind of in a situation where he just does. You don't really see him think. He just does. And so, right. And so he's come from war, and he's definitely killed before this moment in the series. But I guess it's just interesting that his character, I guess you're right. He doesn't see killing as a problem. It's only something that he uses as a tool. And it's and it's just weird because I'm wondering if we're going to see any some sort of redemption arc for what happened here, or if the show is just going to go and explore even further how we get to the Cassian that we get to in Rogue One, where he's just like, this isn't even a problem anymore, that he just has to do what he has to do. So I don't know. I'm super intrigued to see how they move this character through this storyline to get him from point A to point B. But I did want to move on here and talk about something a little bit more happy and fun and light. Back on Ferrix in the Morlani system, we're introduced to B2 Emo as he rolls past a pack of Sibian hounds, which, by the way, Kevin, we saw Sibian hounds in the Solo movie, which was not as good as Rogue One. He finds Cassian, and we learn that he's a nervous little droid with a stutter. So let's talk about B2 Emo. I know Justin Adria Arjona in an interview apparently denied that he was emo, but I do think he is very much emotional. What do you think of this addition to the lineup of Star Wars droids?
Oh, he 100% is very emotional. I think that's definitely rooted. He second guesses himself. He stutters when he speaks, which is kind of like a glitch, but it's just a very lovable trait.
Yeah.
I think he's a great addition to the long line of droids that we've been introduced to, and he has a bit of a different personality. I think I could kind of relate to him, to be honest.
That's cute.
Well, and I just like how, we'll learn later on just how long Cassian and B2 have known each other. And so while we don't know that here, you can already get the sense of, B2's very much looking out for Cassian. He's very much protective of him. Where have you been? What have you been doing? He's almost the voice of reason when his own mother can't be there. And I think that's such a cool, it's a really neat change to almost have this sort of emotional, this emotional aspect of this droid. And it's not just a droid doing its job. It's a droid actually caring for this human counterpart, which I think is a really, really neat twist.
Very Baymax.
Yes, very Baymax. But I will say one thing that he obviously doesn't have Baymax's confidence, because I love how he's still smart enough though to lie about things. Like he'll be like, like one point he gets nervous to tell Cassian what Marva told Brazo, and he's like pausing for data lag, and he's not actually pausing for data lag. He just doesn't want to tell him what she said. So he's so loyal, and he just wants everyone to be happy. And I love when he's like, "That's 2 lies," and then he cocks his head like a little dog. like he has enough room for 1 lie, but 2 lies, I don't know. And just the way he gets sad when Cassian leaves without him, like he is kind of like a dog at that point. And I don't know, man. I just I'm really happy about B2 Emo, and I hope that we do get more of him throughout this series at some point. I love him too much. So listen, we do get a peek at this point into Cassian's past with his tribe on Kenari, and that's going to happen a few times throughout all 3 of these episodes. So what I was thinking, if it's okay with you guys, I'm actually going to combine all these flashback moments so that we can talk about them at the very end of our discussion, if that's okay. Cool?
Sure.
I think that makes the most sense.
Cool. We'll flash back to them later. Let's go ahead and move on here. After a brief conversation with Brazo to give him an alibi, Cassian talks to him, says, they have a really wonderful little back and forth about just trying to, protect Cassian's story, if you will. But we shift back to Morlana 1, this time at the corporate security headquarters, where we meet Deputy Inspector Cyril Karn reporting to Chief Hine about the 2 Sentry corporals who've been murdered outside the brothel in Zone 5. The chief abruptly stops Cyril's strict report and casually asks him to cover up the murder by turning it into an accident outside the leisure zone. He says, make it as though they died being helpful, something sad but inspiring in a mundane sort of way. Cyril is shocked by the careless and deceitful nature of his superior, as Chief Hine reminds him that in these situations, brevity is what's best for everyone, including Cyril himself. Cyril goes on throughout the episode, unfazed by the complacency of his higher-up, and continues to press his less-than-enthusiastic coworkers to do better, and finds out, he tries to find out more information regarding these murders. So we can talk about Cyril. We keep calling him Cyril. We can talk about Cyril in detail. What do you think of our first look, Kevin, at Kyle Solar's character?
I think Kyle does such a great job of playing this character who, I guess we would say he's on the wrong side of the good and bad argument, but he's definitely driven by a moral code that isn't based on greed. It's not based on control. It's based on justice and right and wrong. Mm-hmm. And so that's a really interesting sort of spin on a character, that we're used to working for, the dark side or the empirical side of things, the empire, if you will. And I think there's just, you get it more and more as the episodes go along. There's so much to talk about the nuances of his performance, but you really quickly gain a sense of who this character is and what's driving them. And it's a really neat take to see somebody on that side. We're used to characters like Hux and everything like that, who are just little bootlicking, whipping boys for their higher ups. And here we have a real sense of no, we have to do the right thing, fight for justice here. And I think that's a really interesting spin and only adds to the dynamic as we go forward.
Yeah, it sets an interesting precedence because, like you're saying, Kevin, we automatically assume the Empire is filled with bad people, but here you have someone who is on the bad side, but his intentions are actually good. Like, they would be no different from a cop who would want to find out the murder of fellow police officers. But, again, I think this introduction of his character sets as a very great polar opposite to Andor, and that sort of cat and mouse that we will see sort of unfold throughout the rest of these 3 episodes. I like that. I like that you have someone that is on the bad that it stands for good. It's kind of weird. It's an interesting juxtaposition of the two.
Yeah, and you can see how he wants to do good so much that he'll do bad to get to it.
Bad, exactly.
I think Kyle is playing the character so well. I barely even recognized him, I'll be honest with you, when we did the interview. I had the chance to sit down with Kyle and Denise Goff as well from this series that we don't get to meet in these 3 episodes. But I will say, when we interviewed Kyle, he had a big, giant beard, which looked phenomenal, by the way. But he looked so, like, kind, and his eyes were so nice, and here he looked
smiled.
So rigid and serious. Yeah,
he smiled. You never see him do it once in the show. Not even crack a grin. So it's such a difference between the characters.
Yeah, he's cold.
He's
very cold.
And you can see, Justin, you brought up Chief Hine earlier. I think that's what you were sort of insinuating, referring to.
Yes.
You just see how the rebels have been able to get away with what they're getting away with, right? Like, it's just interesting because Chief Hine is kind of like the general manager for a store, he's like a Walmart manager that just like, listen, if we just keep our heads down and do a good enough job, corporate's not going to come in here and we don't have to worry about anything. We can just sort of all get by and do the bare minimum without really, having to do anything. And you see how that's trickled down to sort of Cyril's other officers, his coworkers, if you will. And that's clearly not good enough for Cyril.
No, it's definitely not. But Chief Hine isn't wrong, right? Like, I think at the same time, like, he described the situation where 2 men were probably coursing the wrong person, and
he's an excellent detective. He absolutely nailed that scenario based
exactly.
on what had happened. I was like, ooh, that was very good sleuthing. Yeah.
Yeah, he solved the crime right in the moment. And I think it goes to show, because I think in that conversation too, he hints at the fact that, they've won the war. They don't need to be so rigid. Again, it is about just keeping your head down and maintaining, as you said, Nate. So yeah, I think that it's clear that the Empire's getting a little lazy.
Yeah, but you're right. The Empire has clearly gotten to a place now where they're kind of just like, oh, we got this on lock. Don't worry about it. Put everything in autopilot. Everything's going to be fine. You don't have to look too hard for anything. So let's keep going here. Cassian confronts Bix as she's working, Bix Colleen. She's working on an engine. It looked like a pod racing engine, by the way, which was freaking dope. I hope there's pod racing at some point for some reason in this show. But anyways, she's working on a pod racing engine, and he asks her to reach out to her secret friend who buys things. She tells him she likes to sell in bulk. Cassian informs her that it needs to be quick, as he has an untraceable NS9 Starpath unit. She's frustrated that he's been holding out on her, and he reminds her that she's been skimping off the top as well. After some more convincing, she agrees to let her buyer know, which we do see her in the episode. She covertly talks to a shop owner, climbs up a thing, and then lets the buyer know through getting a message out to him very covertly and secretively. So Adria Arjona plays Bix. Justin, you had the chance to interview her. What did you think of our introduction to Bix and her relationship with Cassian?
Well, her relationship with Cassian, and obviously they seem like they're close.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're romantic partners in the past, maybe that's yet to be really kind of discussed, if you will. But it's definitely implied. But what I love with her, the introduction of her character, is that very much like Andor, she is a survivor who is, laying low and doing what she can. Able to use what resources you can, lay low on the grid, hustle where you can. But what's interesting too is because while everyone seems to imbue this sort of survival, they're in it together. And again, that'll get explored as we go further in these episodes. But yeah, her character very much is, it being that she's a new character, she really does stand out as being someone that is going to be impactful to this story and potentially to the rebellion as we move forward. And even in this small instance, it was great to see her energy on screen as she just was so in control and confident.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to say, it's at this point of the episode that I'm at the most confused that I ever was in watching this show. I think up to this point things are a little muddy, just in the sense that we see Cassian at the beginning. He's on this mission, it seems, to find his sister. Then we get a flashback, and I know we're going to talk about that later, but we get this flashback where we seem to meet his sister. Then we go to this scene where we meet Bix, and I'm sorry, but the actress playing Bix here very much looks like an older version of the young actress playing his sister. And so and he's got this device that he hasn't talked about at all. And all of a sudden so now we've seen Cassie in the first 20 minutes with 2 different missions. He's selling this very important thing, but he's also looking for his sister. Like, I just thought this was the muddiest and almost sloppiest that the show got, in that because we're not familiar with these characters, it was a little confusing going, well, is that his sister? I guess not, because he's talking about not knowing her, but we've definitely and so it does help itself clear out a little bit, but it is a little bit ambiguous as to who these people are and what real motivations are, just up to this point, at least for me.
I was seeing it as the fact that he was seeking her out to try to sell this, because obviously he knows that she has a contact, but since he's killed those 2 guards, he needs to get off planet, like toot sweet. So he's trying to hustle what he can and push through. And it's interesting that in this sort of first interaction, it is very, as you said, it's a little confusing, because we are being kind of thrusted into this story, and we're not really given too much context around what's going on other than a rough time period, I guess, before other events.
Well, to be fair, and I think it is at the end of this episode that he does talk to Pegla at the shipping yard, and Pegla's like, I want nothing to do with you anymore. And clearly that's where he was getting his ship from. That's the ship that he uses to get off the planet after killing those guards. In my mind, you're right, Kevin. It's like, well, why couldn't he just use that ship to get off? Like, why doesn't he just use that ship again? And so they did. You're right. They don't clearly give an established reason as to why he needs to move this Starpath unit so quickly, because they've sort of established the idea that he can get off planet really quickly. So, but I will say regarding Bix, I thought, clearly they've had their disagreements in the past, but something keeps bringing them back together. And I think that's such a realistic relationship that I don't think we've gotten too much in Star Wars, is this idea of a friendship where the 2 characters really butt heads, and you can tell that they've gone their separate ways, but something keeps bringing them back together. And whether that's a friendship or a romantic relationship is obviously yet to be discerned. But I will say, Tim, who is Bix's I guess, partner, or she's got a relationship with Tim that is a romantic relationship. He does say, are we betting on a Wobani run tomorrow? And so, all the people out there that are complaining on Twitter, there's no Star Wars in this show, there's no Easter eggs, I want more Easter eggs. There's your frickin' Easter eggs, okay? Wobani, if you don't remember, is where Jyn Erso would eventually be imprisoned in Rogue One. So there you go. He's trying to see if they're having some folks go to the imprisonment planet of Wobani. So anyways, I just wanted to bring that up because I'm sick and tired of people saying that there's no Easter eggs. There are. Let's just jump. There's obviously the episode ends with a flashback. As I said, we'll get to it. Let's jump into episode 2 here. The episode starts with Cassian back on Ferrix. We see the day is started by the Time Grappler, which is dope. The subtitles call him the Time Grappler, and I don't know, it's just a dope name for this guy ringing the bell.
Never has somebody since Quasimodo taken so much pride in ringing the town bells. Like, this guy is just like, he's cocking his neck. Yeah. He's getting those shoulders rolled. He is ready to bang the shit out of this anvil.
Yeah.
I love this guy. I love this guy. He does a great job too.
Dude, I think
the whole town is lucky to have him.
He would be a phenomenal wrestler. I think if we ever made a Star Wars wrestling show, get the Time Grappler in there.
I mean, the Time Grappler is a wicked name. I want to know a little bit more about this.
That's
guy.
what I'm saying.
Well,
dude.
it seems also very ritualistic, like in its moment. It's repetitive. It's something he takes pride in because he's starting the day and ending the day.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh yeah.
And the day is working.
Yeah.
Right. The day is to hustle, to survive. Again, all these things that are themes that we're playing with throughout the first episode, continuing right into the second here. introduction of someone who cares about what they do. And it's intense. It's awesome.
Yeah. And, throughout this episode going forward, we're going to see the pieces start to move. We learn more about the characters' relationships with each other. We see that now the ISB has put out a warrant for Cassian's arrest, looking for a Kenari male resident. And we're introduced to Marva, Cassian's adopted mother. And we also see Tim's betrayal, as well as a very awkward speech from Cyril. So let's start with Bix and Tim. Back to where we were with Bix and Tim. Obviously, he's starting to become more and more suspicious of her, to the point where he betrays both her and Cassian. Do you guys think this was out of pure jealousy? I mean, clearly the guy is unhappy with the situation he's in.
Yeah, he's salty. He
Yeah.
doesn't want Andor around, trifling on his territory with Bix, and he takes it a little too far, and he's pretty low, if you ask me.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, I don't even know if it's a jealousy thing, right? Like, in terms of an emotional, I think it's you're putting, whoever Bix
Bix
is
in
to
danger.
me
That's
in
what I was
danger.
gonna say,
And
yeah.
so you need to scram. Everybody who knows Cassian sort of knows that he's no good and just draws
He's trouble.
attention. He draws, So I think it's more like this is a chance to get rid of this guy. If I get one, I'm going to take it.
And clearly he's not informed as far as Bix's, relationship or her alliance to the rebellion. Like, he doesn't know any of this stuff, right? He finds it out. And I think with that lack of communication, he starts to draw his own conclusions. And I thought the line that Cassian says, where he's like, well, you're going to have to find a less complicated woman. Good luck with that. I just thought was a really interesting line from Cassian, just given his relationship with Bix and what he knows of her. But bringing up the idea of Cassian and Bix having a romantic relationship, in another scene at the local cantina in this episode, we see Cassian tell Bix that he messed up and that he'll just sell her the piece. And she's like, well, it's too late. I already got the buyer on his way. Cassian then holds her hand, and he tells her not to forget what he'll not forget what she's done for him, but she pushes it away and says he should go. So do you guys like that? I think that clearly means at one point they were holding hands on purpose.
Of course.
Yeah,
for sure. And she wants to rid herself of that memory.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think what she's instinctively doing is putting distance between her and him, because she knows that he's trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Tim. Is that his name? Tim?
Which, by the way,
Tim.
for Star Wars,
Most
Cassian
basic name.
Andor, Bix Colleen, Marva.
Tim.
Tim. But to be fair, it's spelled it's two
Luke
M's.
isn't the craziest
Okay, Luke,
space
there
name
you
of
go.
all time.
Sure,
Yeah,
fine.
sure.
But just the fact that we've got a Tim in Star Wars with two M's, by the way. It's so funny.
Yes, with
But
two
not where you
M's, of
think.
course.
But not what
Yeah.
you think. That's a shout out to our other watch clubs for She-Hulk.
But yeah, I think Tim didn't need to do anything. Again, I think he was threatened by their relationship and wanted to start, a future with Bix. Therefore, getting him removed, it's 100%, I want to protect Bix, but it's a little bit of like, if I do this, it'll happen faster, right?
Yeah.
It's going to speed up the process, and Bix and Tim can focus on them moving forward. But yeah, I think it's genuinely implied in this scene that she wants to put the space there. She wants the distance. Their relationship's not good for either of them.
And I think Tim might even be angry in this moment that he's almost seeing himself as, I'm just the guy that's used so that you can put distance between your other life. And, I'm like an escape for you, but I'm not an escape on our terms, on the terms that we set. I'm an escape on your terms. And I think for him, that's where he very much gets a little bit frustrated. And we do get that moment where Bix shows up at Tim's place, and she's like, I couldn't
it was a
sleep.
booty call.
It was a
That
booty
was a
call.
straight up booty call.
Hold
Let's
on.
talk about
let's
that
talk
for a
about this.
second.
Right. The first time, is this the first time that, straight up sex was implied in a galaxy far,
Implied?
far away? Because obviously, Anakin, Padme, and they had kids, but still, this is pretty going there.
This is bold. Again,
yeah.
it's on the same tier of brothel.
Yeah.
In that it's implied.
Yeah.
The adult audience understands what it's implying. Here, she shows up there. I'm like, oh, yo, she's here for something, right?
Yeah.
And I think, again, it's just to kind of push the boundaries here. You don't need to keep Star Wars in this adolescent place. You can kind of go a little bit bolder and push the boundaries more and allow the audience to read the situation. And so, yeah, she was there for a purpose, and yeah, she won.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really bothers Tim, is that he'll always just be some sort of physical attraction that allows for her to decompress.
Yeah.
Well, and then he's always going to be wondering if she was thinking about Cassian the whole time, right?
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, let's be honest here. We know that Padme and Anakin weren't just slicing pears in sexual, flirty ways with each other on Naboo there.
Sure, I guess that might be the closest we've gotten, but I don't know, man. This just felt
this was straight up dirty midnight.
No, this was
call.
this again.
Wow.
You're absolutely right, man. It is more blatantly obvious here than it has ever been, because again, as Kevin's pointing out, it's obviously implied because Anakin and Padme would have twins later. So how else would that happen? We know what that implies. So here, though, it wasn't about like love. It was about just that sort of physical need to release, if you will.
I will say, having done the whole romantic comedy, romance movie thing of laying in bed and staring, at her as she wakes up, and really soft and lovely, and just taking her in, that's beautiful. But Tim, you're sitting off the bed, fully dressed, staring at her. Like, it was creepy as heck, dude. Like, that's not how you do that moment, dude.
I don't trust this guy.
No.
Right? Like, again,
as we shouldn't, clearly. He ratted them out.
Yeah, as we clearly shouldn't. But he had calf.
That's what I wanted to shout out.
So that's,
dude.
Yeah, he had calf. You gotta.
Anybody who's ever been to Galaxy's Edge, please get yourself some calf. The black calf there is so delicious, and that's coming from somebody who's not really a coffee fan. It is so good, and I just love. Shout out to Star Wars Coffee. That's so dope that they have coffee now in Star Wars. It's fantastic. All right, let's keep going here. Let's move on to Mama Marva. Cassian comes home to. I almost sounded like B2 emo there for a second. Marva. Cassian comes home to find Marva incredibly upset because B2 has informed her about the warrant. She's really upset and worried that someone might know that Cassian is not her son, and that he's actually from Kenari. Cassian is distracted by B2, who tells him Bix is looking for him, and his mom's like freaking out. He's like, shut up, Mom, shut up. So he tells Marva that he messed up. Marva sits with her thoughts as Cassian inspects a wrecked ship where he's kept this, the treasured NS9 Starpath unit. And then we also see a scene where Marva discovers Cassian's tribal blow dart staff, and we also see a plush bantha in that moment. There you go, Star Wars fans, little plush bantha Easter egg.
They got one in.
There we go. We got another one. So this is our introduction to Marva. What did you think of her? Obviously, she was pissed that he messed up, but clearly, like, she wasn't as careful as she could have been either, I don't think.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think this is, I just love this actress, Fiona Shaw. She's
phenomenal.
Like, she was phenomenal. She's just so captivating. And even in this introduction moment of how intense she is, how frustrated she is, you really do get this, again, another character that has a sense of protection, this idea of survival, another layer of that from a different perspective of a mother, will, and I use that in air quotes because obviously, she's not his mother, but she feels responsible for him. She feels like she needs to protect him from whatever it is that is out there, and everyone seems to be having that mentality. But kudos to her for in this first scene, just jumping right off the screen and just captivating me. I was like, damn, some good acting.
And I want to bring up really quickly, just before you go, Kevin, the fact that Kevin, after we recorded our spoiler free, he kept trying to find more information about Cassian being from Kenari, and he's like, I just couldn't find it anywhere. And you made the joke that Marva really did her job and made sure that even on the Wikipedia page it wasn't listed.
She had that hidden on the Wikipedia page. That is Mother of the Year quality there. And I know she's not actually his mom, but coming from a situation of an adopted parent, that really does become just that parent. I do think it's kind of interesting though. It's so funny that for me, Fiona Shaw, I know she's terrific in Killing Eve, but for me, she'll always be Aunt Petunia. And so to see her in this role that is so different from that, where she's just so caring and protective of our protagonist, it's such a neat twist for her. And I mean, just to speak of her performance, she's such a badass in some of the flashbacks that we'll be talking about. It's like she pulls off being a badass really, really well, too. So there's a lot of layers that she brings to this character.
For sure.
She's dope. And I love that she's just like, you're right. She's so intense. She's just sitting there, lazy boy with the lamp on. And you're just like, oh my gosh, Cassian, don't go in there.
You're in trouble.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going here. This section I've titled Cyril's New Best Friend. Back with Cyril, Sergeant Linus Mosk joins him, and there's fermenting. And he joins him in the middle of the night, and he's kind of the first officer to actually understand Cyril's discipline. And he agrees. He says they need a stronger hand. There's fermenting out there, pockets of fermenting. Cyril and his team make their way to Ferrix, knowing who Andor is and what he looks like. And then we see this moment where the crew is kind of snickering at the idea of, you know, the locals not being happy after Mosk mentions there's a forum that they can make official complaints, which, you know, he then passes off to Cyril, and Cyril struggles to make an inspiring speech, and they don't really seem to buy it. He seems so nervous. He's never led a team before, clearly. And then Mosk just like awkwardly tries to get the group to clap. Well said, sir. Inspiring. It's that Justin, you brought it up. It's that General Hux bullshit that we usually see from these underlings. So what did you guys think of these Primor security guards? And what did you think of Cyril's speech to them?
I mean, I will just say that this was probably the funniest moment
Yes.
in these episodes. Was the, you know, Mox's oh god, that went poorly, and we're about to go into who knows how dangerous of a situation.
Yeah.
He should have left it at his speech, because his was like a pump you up, ready to go into battle sort of speech. So to see Cyril, like, again, he's just trying so hard and is in way over his head, and you almost feel bad for him here. Like there's just such a sense of pity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's sort of it. He's ahead of himself. He's trying to do more than he can necessarily handle, and I think he's trying to do more than he thinks he can understand, really. He doesn't have all the pieces. He's just out to prove something. And you know, you brought it up when we were talking about episode 1, just this concept around his character believing so much in how he is the hero, right, of his own story. And I think in this moment where he's trying to give this compelling, inspiring speech, and you see how far he falls from any of that, it's so short of that. It just highlights how unprepared he is.
It's fantastic that we're finally getting to see, you know, what's under a stormtrooper. Right, I think, you know, going all the way back to the original Star Wars, it's like, oh, stormtroopers, yeah, they're the lackeys, they're the crew that just is like the cannon fodder. No. Stormtroopers are a huge step up from these guys, because, you know, they're far below stormtroopers. And again, you see them snickering at the idea of locals making a formal complaint. It just shows how they don't care about keeping the peace. They only care about they kind of care about what they're told to do, and not even that much. And
they just care about power,
right? And you see, like, I think even just seeing how green Cyril is in this, it was so hard to watch. I kind of almost felt bad for him at a certain point. And then Mosk is just the worst, kissing his ass. Just, you know, Mosk is taking a different approach to getting more power, which is like a more deceitful, more cowardly way of just kind of really trying to pump this guy up. And it's just so unfortunate.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're almost seeing this level where if the stormtroopers are like the army of the Empire, these are your local police forces. So these guys don't have nearly the same weaponry, the same training, anything like that in terms of going into these larger situations.
Corrupt cops.
And, well, yes, they're very, very crooked cops. And I wonder how much of the show is meant to be sort of, you know, an examination of crooked cops
100%.
and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
It's 100% trying to bring in a lot of those real situations, and those crime films, those espionage films, and integrate it into here. And I think this group of Primor security enforcers, they're very much depicted as cops, crooked cops at that. You know, they want their power. They that's why they bully people.
Yeah.
You know, again, this is all dealing with a very real theme. And I think with these Primor security guards, they're very much an allegory for sort of corrupt cops.
And they're not soldiers. They're not soldiers.
No.
They are not soldiers. No. They are very much cops. I even kind of thought of them as like, mall security guards at one point. But let's keep going here. We're then introduced to Luthen Rail. This episode, we get to see him played by Stellan Skarsgård, and we see him on the bus. He's on local public transport where he meets another visitor to Ferrix who complains about the price of visiting. The visitor says he's there for business, and if you ask me, I think he's a little too talkative. He says if you can't find it here, it's not worth finding, and then they do a sort of a close-up shot of Cassian, obviously implying what Luthen is there for. But what did you guys think? I feel like, who is this guy, this salesman? They seem to focus a little bit too long on him. Do you think he's anyone we need to worry about? Maybe. I don't know. For me, honestly, for a moment, it reminded me of that scene in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles with John Candy. And when he sits down to Steve Martin's character, it's just constantly talking to him, and he's overly chatty. And I don't know, man. I feel like he seemed too clean cut. He's got his little hat, right? And he's just a salesman. I'm sorry, you're going to this dirty, gross planet of Ferrix where everyone looks like they're covered in some type of dust and mud, and you look like that. I don't know. I felt like there was something going on. He just seemed too happy to be getting into a situation where they get you, in his words, get you coming and going. I don't know.
There was a very Western vibe to this moment, though, right? In
Sure.
the sense of, the stranger traveling
on the
into
train
town, and right,
Yeah.
and the chatty, and like you said, the chatty, talkative salesman who's there for business, trying to find out, who's this guy, right?
Mhm.
I think it's, in a way, was more of a direction to use a character like this chatty salesman to show how secretive and protective Luthen is in what he does and whatnot. So I liked the sort of, again, Star Wars dips into these motifs of samurai and Western, and here we got a little bit of that Western vibe.
Yeah, and I think this does a lot. Rather than drawing suspicion to this salesman character, I think this is more, it's almost meant to just show that he can handle himself in the grittiest situations. He knows how to get by, how to protect, his mission, how to keep himself from drawing any attention to himself. And so, yeah, I just think this was a really neat way to introduce him before we get to really dive into who his character is and how he operates.
Listen, if we do get this guy again, this salesman guy, I'm going to be calling Mephisto, okay? I'm just going to call Mephisto. I'm going to say it right there. That's who it is. Because we probably won't see him again. Anyways, that is the ending of this episode. And then we get this ending song with Andor walking towards the camera, and we get this rock music. Again, so incredibly different. What are your thoughts on this ending music?
I laughed, actually,
Yeah.
First initial reaction, because it was just so jarringly different. And I don't think anything really warranted such a rock-inspired song. It just felt like it was trying a little too hard to be overly intense. I get, at the top here, we're talking about how different the music is, but I think this is where it kind of fell short for me here. It was an odd choice, but I would have liked to have heard more maybe of those massive drum beats from the Time Grappler that we got at the beginning. Those sort of,
Yeah.
if you had something like that to kind of wrap up and sort of, as Nate loves, the bookend
of the episode would be cool. Yeah,
with
that would've been
that
cool.
sound rather than some heavy rock.
Butt rock. Yeah.
It was kind of awesome. It was kind of like Star Wars' attempt at jumping on the viral trend that's going on now, and it was like if Andor came out in 2007, where they play that Linkin Park song as the credits come in. You know what I mean? Like that just made me think of those YouTube videos that have been going around, because those are absolutely hysterical.
If somebody's listening to this and we haven't seen that yet, please do that. Please make it. It's absolutely going to fit perfectly. Yes, I really dug it. I think it's awesome that we're getting a diverse collection of Star Wars music. First with, I think Ludwig Göransson with The Mandalorian, and then with, Boba Fett, or whatever that song was. We're getting, but the cool thing is we're getting away from, as much as I love the John Williams classic stuff, and I'll always love it.
Right.
I love that we're getting
New
so
defining
many
songs.
Exactly, which makes sense, because we're also getting new stories that need those new genres of music. So I'm super excited to see whatever the first hip hop song that Lin-Manuel Miranda is probably going to do a hip hop Star Wars song for Taika Waititi's new.
I think he already did.
Star Wars. Did he?
I think he already did.
That already happened?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to...
I think he actually might have done something when The Force Awakens.
Oh yeah, I know he did a few.
He
did a few pieces. I don't know if it was hip hop, but we'll see. All right. In this final episode, let's move on to episode 3 here. These 3 episodes feel like a big arc here. Cassian finally meets with Luthen and learns that he's there for more than just the stolen Starpath unit, as well as we get to see Cyril's forces arrive on Ferrix, and shit goes down. At a salvage yard, Cassian meets with Brasso and asks to keep an eye on Marva, which I don't think ever actually happens in the episode. I don't think Brasso and Marva ever actually meet up, or he takes care of her. Obviously, things move pretty quickly. But Luthen arrives at the Ferrix terminal, and that talkative businessman tells him not to stay at a hotel and to mind his wallet. And he meets with Bix, and she tells him where to meet with Cassian. Cyril and the Morlana enforcers arrive on Ferrix. They split up into 4 teams, north, east, south, and west, and Mosk orders all teams to stand by, and then Cassian makes it to the drop-off location to meet the buyer. So let's start off with Cyril and his team interrogating Marva. Mosk finds B2 Emo, and they silence Marva, is the nice way that I'm going to put it. Cassian contacts B, who unfortunately can't turn off speakerphone. Like, B2 Emo, like, just turn speakerphone off, my guy. Like, what's wrong with you? And the crew overhears and tracks Cassian's signal. And then they notice they've drawn a crowd of upset locals. And then we see the locals start banding together and warning the entire community of the Primor security team's presence by banging on those pipes. So I got to say, Marva's clearly been in this situation before. And I love how she's so resilient and calm throughout. I think she instantly sees through just how green these Primor enforcers are. She's obviously dealt with actual soldiers in the past. What did you guys think of this intense moment?
I think it just, again, going back to what we were talking about in episode 2, the highlight of them being seen as crooked cops, the way they force themselves in, they are forcefully interrogating Marva and trying to unravel whatever they can. It just the whole notion of it, also just how as you put it, green. Yeah, we're here to find out more information. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're gonna smash your shit and we're gonna do stuff to you. So you better tell us where Andor is.
Yeah,
like, that's
like
kind of what they felt like. Yeah, they're bullies. Yeah. Exactly. They're seen as bullies, and it's very clear that they're not the cool kids. They're trying to be the cool kids. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Like they're trying to be the cool kids.
100%. And I just think this is almost a microcosm of what's been happening in this whole series so far, and that we're getting this slow build that's just amping up. And so this opening here, this beginning to this whole sort of search and seizure type operation is very much it's just starting in its intensity, and it's only going to get more intense as it goes on, and Marva really plays that up as it goes on. And again, it's just another instance of how much of a badass she is.
Yeah, and it reminded me a lot of seeing the community band together and start banging on the pipes. Like, that reminded me, again, obviously Star Wars. As much as this is in the spy thriller genre, I'm like, oh, we're back to the Old West again. This is the Old West. This is like a thing where you would see the entire community banding together, ringing a little bell here or ringing a little bell there. And it also reminded me a lot of like Lord of the Rings, when they light all the big towers and everything. And I'm like, okay, the whole community is together on this. These guys do not stand a chance against this entire group of people. And you can just see that, by them banging on all these little these pipes, it kind of gets in their heads, and it forces them to think that there are greater numbers than there actually are. And I love that about that. I love the idea that they're just sort of playing with their minds, very, very Batman-esque, to sort of just scare them in a way. And even hearing her, like, that's what a reckoning looks like. You want it to stop, but it just keeps coming. It's when it stops, that's when you really want to start to fret. And then it just stops. And I'm like, oh boy, you got it coming now, boy. Like, so good.
And leading into, obviously, the action that we'll get, the slow build all of it has been made worth it. Like, it's all gratifying when you get to this point and you have this stuff moving, and you very much sense, as we will get to, some of the action that this episode has that the first two lacked.
Yeah, let's kind of get to some of that. Let's move on to Bix and what's going on with Tim. I titled this one "Bix Finds a Rat and Tim's Death." Bix and Tim become even more suspicious of each other. So Bix learns that someone ratted out Cassian, and before she can leave, Tim tells her not to, and then he sort of says he can take care of himself. But at no point in time did Bix ever inform Tim that who they were talking about. And she's like, how do you know what we're talking about? Of course, this tips her off that Tim was the one who ratted out Cassian to the Pre-More Enforcers. And she says, how could you? We then get later into the episode when again, shit hits the fan. Bix on the run. She's stopped by East Team. Tim freaks out at them and says, because obviously they see her like she's like half on the ground. He starts running towards her, all worried, and they shoot him dead. So rest in peace, Tim. We're gonna pause here for a moment of silence for Tim. No, we're not. Do you guys think? Do you guys think Tim did Tim deserve to go out this way, Kevin? Did Tim deserve to go out this way?
I'm never gonna say anybody deserved to die. Like even though he's a rat bitch.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel bad about it. That's for
Right.
sure. I mean, he it's his fault. He brought this on himself, and then they told him to stop, to stay where he was, and he didn't follow orders. And so, I mean, I don't know. It's, again, I'm not going to say it. I wanted it to happen, but I'm not upset that it did.
No, but it does go with what you guys were saying when we were talking about episode 1 and why he might do it. It's very much he wanted to protect her. So he was trying to get at her so he could still do that, and inevitably it got him dead.
And I think that kind of focuses in on sort of, again, like the idea that at no point in time, like, you're right, Kevin. He would obviously have been quite an annoying character to have to put up with if he didn't die. But at the same time, like, you just see Bix very much still cares for him based off of her reaction, and she still understands sort of his motives as to why he did what he did, even if she can't fully understand in that moment. It's almost like the fact that even the opportunity for him to right his wrongs is taken away from him. She sees how unfair that is in that moment, and I think that's just that's fantastic that this show can I can see that from that show or from this show, and I can see this in her performance in even just such a short interaction, a short scene where they just offed him so unceremoniously, and clearly, by the way, as we were saying, these Pre-More Enforcers, they're not capable of doing any of this. Like, they are just messing up left, right, and center here.
It's poor planning. But the reality is, again, this idea of reaction. They reacted to the situation and just shot him. And I think that is so prevalent in news stories that you hear about police interactions and stuff like that, and the idea of the reaction. So it feels like overly relevant talking about it, but to also see someone like Bix, again, like you said, Nate, she obviously has feelings for Tim, and I think we see here that this is what she's been trying to protect herself from, is this loss.
And you got to imagine that level of guilt for her, right, in that moment where she just feels like, if I had never brought this guy into it, absolutely, then he wouldn't be in this situation. So let's keep going here. Let's get to the sort of I think probably my favorite part of all three of these episodes, the meeting with Luthen. Luthen shows up and meets Cassian at the drop-off location, and after validating that they're alone, he approaches him. Cassian asks Luthen for 40,000 credits, and he says you can track every Imperial coordinate for 9 radial parsecs, which again brings up the question of, like, parsecs, are they distance, are they time? I still don't know, but I'm still going to say, in our watch clubs, be back in less than 12 parsecs. Luthen eventually realizes Luthen eventually reveals his hand, that he isn't there to buy the NS9 Star Path unit. Luthen tells him these days are numbered. He reveals that he knows more about Cassian by mentioning that if he is caught with the stolen gear, that they'd probably take him and hang him up on Rick's Road in the square like Cassian's father. He sees Cassian's talents and asks him, don't you want to fight these bastards for real? That's my Luthen impression. So this is our first real scene with Stellar. I wrote it. I misspelt it. Stellar Skarsgård because he is Stellar.
Which he is.
Yeah,
yes, he absolutely is.
But this is our first real scene with Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen. I thought it was fantastic. I love how dedicated he was to bringing Andor on to fight a bigger fight. And just the way he carries himself here, you can tell that he's done this before. He's obviously recruited a ton of people to the cause before. What did you guys think of this performance here and how quickly he was able to navigate this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think the stakes, the situation obviously implores him to get this sort of negotiation with Cassian done as quickly as possible. And again, it just shows how smart this character is, that he's able to sort of convince him to do, I mean, obviously Cassian's back is against the wall here.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have much of a choice, but he still is almost acting like he does. But Luthen really is able to just, cut through the bullshit and be like, listen, man, I kind of know who you are and I kind of know what you're about. And I kind of think that we could really do some good together.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just thought, I think this is the kind of scene this is the kind of not just singular conversation, but it could be something that could go on for episodes and episodes worth of negotiating. And I'm so glad that it was done in such a quick way to sort of just move on to the next part of their story. I really appreciated that.
And I think the other interesting thing is, obviously beyond what we know of Cassian and where he would be in Rogue One, there's something important and integral about him in this moment, in what is going to happen next. So why Luthen's there only incites, well, what is so big that they need, you need Cassian for, right? That you would risk all of this, go out of your way to try to acquire him, to bring him onto this team. That inciting, that intrigue of what's next is also really, really cool in this seed planting.
I mean, this scene is the scene that they put inside the 11-minute preview that they put out on Disney Plus a few days ago for the series, and it was absolutely the right choice to put that in there, because I think this scene, it really is kind of the culmination of all three of these episodes and potentially even this series. I think just the way that everything, the conversation happens. I love that he's leading the conversation by asking questions. He's using he's leading. Yeah, he's leading, Cassian to the answers that he knows he wants to get from him. And he goes about retrieving. He asks about retrieving the equipment, and I love Cassian's response of just saying, "You just walk in like you belong." They're so proud of themselves. They don't even care. They're so proud and satisfied. They can't imagine someone like me would get in their house, walk their floor, spit in their food. And it's such a badass line. And I love it because it's exactly the approach that Cassian, K2SO, and Jyn Erso will eventually take when they sneak onto the base in Scarif. They do exactly that. They walk in like they belong, and it works perfectly for them. Well, not perfectly, but it works to get the job done. And I think, you can see the thinking behind those decisions in this moment, and he really reveals that. I also think the aspect of, as I was saying, underestimating the enemy is exactly what we've seen from the Empire before, and especially in this show, and especially in this episode. I think Luthen sees that Cassian fully understands that, and the little nuances of how to walk directly through their defenses, and that's what makes him so much more valuable to the Resistance. I think that's, this conversation, he was very confident that Cassian was what he needed to bring home, but this is the conversation. These are the moments that locked it in for him. And I just want to bring up the mention of the hanging of Cassian's father. So he can't be referring to his actual father here. Obviously, we're going to talk about those flashbacks in a bit, but his actual father probably wouldn't have come to Ferrix, or do we think he's talking about an adopted father in this situation? Because obviously the hanging happened on Ferrix.
Well, we were talking about it. It's very much a found family story with Andor's past. So I think that the father implication is very similar to the fact that, Marva Cass is kind of considered his mother. I think it is an adoptive.
So it'd be her husband, probably. Or partner,
husband, or a partner of some kind, like someone that was of importance that definitely has inspired the Cassian Andor that we know.
I hope we get to see him. And that would be really cool if we get maybe more recent flashbacks.
Sure. I'm wondering if we did when it was in the flashbacks, but I might be forgetting stuff. So.
Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know if we get an explanation of who Marv and the other gentlemen are.
Mm-hmm.
But
In
what
relation
if
to each
that-
other.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
what if that's
they-
his? Mhm.
Yeah, like what if we have met him? Like that's where I was going as soon as you mentioned that. Just I thought the same thing.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Well, let's get to the escape here. Luthen and Cassian are discovered, and they learn that they're surrounded. And Luthen blasts the doors open, and a shootout commences again. Going, spy thriller, Old West mix up here. And Cassian attempts to recover the box, but he's shot in the shoulder, and it's too late. As the entire building collapses around them, they escape through a hole in the back of the building. Cyril and his group attempt to flank Luthen and Cassian, but they're tricked as the community continues to bang on the pipes. It gets louder and louder and louder and louder, and then it stops. Just want a good, nice pregnant pause there, just to be like, people be like, oh, did the app stop? Did my podcast app stop? Cassian,
We're still here, folks.
We're still here. Cassian catches up to Cyril at gunpoint and tells him to drop his weapon and take off his comm. Luthen says, kill him. Cyril is forced to tell Cassian the numbers. He says there's about a dozen officers, and they tie him up and throw him in the back of a building. One of those officers jumps in a pod and attempts to get it in the air, but it's been tied down, and this causes him to completely lose control and immediately crash into the building. Cassian and Luthen send a ship out as the Primor team shoots at it, and it explodes. And after a brief smile, or a slight smile, between Cyril and Mosk, they discover there's no one inside. And Cassian and Luthen escape past them as Cyril's grin quickly becomes a grimace. So a couple things here. First of all, let's get to the ship being tied down, which I thought was one of the most brutal deaths that we've seen in Star Wars in quite some time. Obviously, we've seen people get their heads chopped off, but this was still pretty brutal. What do you think of seeing, this moment, and who do you think actually tied the ship down?
Oh, 100%. It was Brazos. It was his friend that we saw earlier in episode 1. And I think it goes to show this again, what we were talking about. It's a sense of community. They look out for each other. They're all in it together. They're surviving together, and they will protect each other at all costs as if they are family. So this, to see that far reach and to see how he steps in to kind of help and tie the ship down, and it, causes that awful death. It was bad. I was
brutal.
like, wow.
I felt bad for the guy. Like,
I actually went,
yeah. Like, and the thing is like, there is a brief second, like a half second or less, where the bells are ringing, and you sort of see Brazo sort of in the background, and he sort of turns, and his buddies are like, come on, that's the signal or whatever. But they still have to like sort of call him over. So clearly his mind is set on, okay, we're gonna screw these guys over. We're gonna really
he was gonna
tie this ship down and really mess them up.
It was 100% him. He bought him some time.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, incredibly dark. And I think it's just dope that like this community is able to dupe the Empire, right? Again, even though they are these low level enforcers, exactly, because they're so cocky, we've got this community. And I think for that guy to go out, again, we don't usually see explosions like that in Star Wars. The closest thing that we would get as far as a death is concerned would be Corday, who was Padme's handmaiden in Attack of the Clones. She gets, thankfully, not blown up, but she kind of gets pushed back by the ship and dies right there. So, but yeah, I will say I think this was really the most shining moment as far as a performance from Kyle Soller with Cyril here. I think you can tell how much he underestimated what he's getting himself into, and having a character like Mosk hyping him up. It reminded me, and Kevin, you'll probably enjoy this analogy. It reminded me of those American Idol auditions where you see those poor individuals who have like, they've got a ton of heart and a ton of passion, and they've got like their mom or their dad, they're like hyping them up like, oh, she's the best singer I ever heard or whatever. And she gets on there and it's just not great, and she's not a good singer. Like that's where I started to really feel bad for Cyril, and just seeing him come to the realization at the end of the episode where you just see the face that he's making, and Mosk has to like shake him to get him out and slap him to get him back to reality. It's just something that honestly I can't get that moment out of my mind, and that was one of the most sort of haunting moments that really stuck with me from his performance. I just feel bad for the guy at this point.
Yeah, it was all heavily foreshadowed that this was definitely going to be the case, that he was getting himself into too much, and it was going to literally blow up in his face and screw him over.
Well, it blew up. It blew up in the other
much
guy's face that was in the ship. But I hear what you're saying.
in the other guy's face, but he was in the vicinity.
Right.
But and definitely this whole plan, this whole effort fell extremely short. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen next with him. But again, I totally agree. I think through these 3 episodes, we saw so much from Cyril that is so tonally different from episode to episode. This stern, tight-knit, very direct, to this point where he's now just, I'm a friggin' soldier. I'm gonna go bring this guy in, and it's gonna be great. I'm gonna look great to everyone. And yeah, it's so thing. So I love that he gave us such a range through each of these episodes, that here now it was, as you described, haunting. It was, what's gonna happen to him? He's in so much
his
shit.
Pride, we literally see on his face his pride turning into fear, right? And that's amazing. It's fantastic.
More like it turns into a puddle or a stream running down his leg.
no.
But stick to your day job. Stick to, being a desk jockey. You are not meant for this big cruel world, little buddy, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Now, the end of the episode kind of is interwoven with the flashback scenes, so I do want to touch upon that, but I kind of want to jump into the flashbacks right at this point, if that's okay with everyone. So getting back to the flashbacks, we see Cassian and his tribe on Kenari, and we're also introduced to his younger sister. They see what I think is one of the mining ships potentially explode and crash, and they decide to start painting their faces with ash ready for battle. We see Cassian admire what I guess is their leader. She's an older girl, and you notice that he actually chooses to paint his face the exact same way as her, and she obviously takes notice of that as well. And Cassian's sister attempts to follow the group, and he tells her to stay behind. We then see Cassian and a group from his tribe pass by, one of the giant mines, where we see him standing over it, and we see the leftover Imperial mining equipment, and we get this great shot of Cassian and just how small he is in comparison. This is clearly his first mission, because in another sequence, we see he has to be grabbed down, just to get into cover. And the group make it to the shipwreck, where they see they sort of follow their leader towards it slowly until she finds a few dead humans who look like their skin has been turned yellow. One of them shoots her, and the tribe proceed to shoot him with blow darts until he collapses. Which, by the way, shout out to blow darts making their debut in Star Wars. Fantastic. I don't think the Ewoks had blow darts, did they?
No, I don't. I think you're right.
Yeah.
But I mean, get a stronger poison. Like, they took a hell of a lot of those bloody darts, man.
Yeah.
Or that guy's just like, he went down like the leader of the Iroquois.
He was yellow, though.
He was just taking those darts like a champ.
Yeah. So unfortunately for their leader, she was killed, and the others decide to turn back and carry her body away as Cassian looks back and decides to continue forward. He heads in, moving slowly throughout the ship, and he discovers more yellow-skinned crew poisoned and dead. He walks through the halls and bridge of the ship until he comes upon his reflection. Mourning for the loss of his friend and former leader, he smashes his own reflection out of anger and disgust for himself that he couldn't do more. We then see a brand new, all shiny, non-broken B2 Emo traversing the crashed ship on Kenari, followed by Marva and Clem, which is interesting. But we see, they stumble upon Cassian smashing up the ship. And he looks at B2 as if he's never seen a droid before, by the way. He's so shook. They at one point, I hear them say they killed a Republic officer. And so I'm trying to think back in the timeline at this point. I guess they would have been called the Galactic Republic at that point in time. And so maybe that was what they were referring to. I'm not sure. I'm a little fuzzy. Obviously, you can write in to let me know if I'm wrong.
So then that would mean that it would be more than 14 years before when Andor the show is taking place,
which makes sense because he's younger.
Yeah, that's if it's at least 14 years, then they would still be the Galactic Republic.
Right. So she says they killed a Republic officer. He freaks out, and then Marva injects him with a dowsing agent to put him to sleep. Marva carries Cassian out of the wreckage back onto her ship, and the four of them escape off planet, something Cassian has never done before. Marva looks back at him, and the episode ends. So let's talk about this ending and these flashbacks. I will say the third episode of these 3 episodes is my favorite of these 3, at least. I think the way this episode ends is so well done, cutting between Marva and the flashback, Cassian with Luthen, Marva alone in her home, Bix completely shaken by the loss of Tim, and Cyril absolutely at a loss, staring at the exploded ship. And then to finish with Marva looking, back in the flashback to an older Cassian now in the current time, reliving this moment with his past, repeating itself in this endless war that he's been in since he was 6 years old, it was masterful storytelling. And I loved how it put a fantastic visual bow on this 3-episode arc, just to sort of say, here's all the characters that we introduced you to, and here's where they've left off after these 3 episodes. It was phenomenal.
I think the intertwining of the flashbacks helps to really show how it's always been embedded in Cassian's life to survive and to be a product of that survival and what that means. So I feel like, yeah, it puts that sort of, as you put, bow on these three episodes as kind of their own story to help set up for what I think is obviously going to be a constant theme throughout the rest of the episodes, is survival and this theme of standing up for yourself and being a part of the fight. I think that, again, this whole wrap up to this 3-episode arc really does solidify that is the strength of Andor's character. He's a fighter, and he will survive at all costs. So yeah, bravo.
Yeah, and it really shows just, why he has this disdain for authority. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we still don't even know why he's, a part of this tribe of children, Lord of the Flies style on this planet. What happened to the adults here? I mean, I'm not sure if we'll ever find that out, but I wonder if it isn't a case of, again, authority. At this point, it would be the Galactic Republic, sort of doing something to his people to sort of orphan all these kids.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because I'm like, did they all go to war and then never come back? Right? And then these kids all just had to learn to fend for themselves, expecting for these parents to eventually return, because there's a certain point in the flashbacks where one of the girls is like, we're over here, it's us, and they're like, shut up, that's not your mom or whatever. You know what I mean? So like, I'm wondering if maybe that was kind of what might have happened to them.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions with that, but there is a very tribal, very, they feel like they're lost. Like the analogy that you used is Lord of the Flies, Kev, and I think that's very much like maybe they're stranded. Maybe they already are in survival mode. Do you know what I mean? And who knows why? But I think that we'll learn more about the planet, because there were some pretty wide scapes, if I'm not mistaken, of just empty chasms in this land that are just being clearly mined. Right? Is that am I
well, and
it's
because there's mining equipment all over the place, and it's abandoned, and we learn that it's the planet is toxic. Obviously, all those people are poisoned and they turn yellow. I'm just assuming that maybe, because here's the thing, they must have had to get off the planet pretty hastily for them to just leave all that equipment there and not take it with them or what have you. So obviously they must have hit something in the planet that maybe released like a toxic gas or something along those lines, and that's what started killing them. And whatever it wasn't worth, whatever it was that they were trying to find. Do you think they were mining for Kyber in this situation? Like, obviously, Kyber is a huge aspect to Rogue One. It's what powers the Death Star. And we know that they've been working on the Death Star since at least Attack of the Clones. So this would have...
That was my first thought, was that it has to definitely be Kyber, because that's what that's what they were always mining for in this sort of period of time, is, to help build enough Kyber crystal to power the Death Star. So I think that's a safe bet. I'm wondering if we'll obviously learn more of that.
Yeah. Anything else to say before we move on from the flashbacks?
Well, I have just been crunching some numbers here for you because I know you've been curious. So are we to believe then that when Cassian says he's been part of the rebellion since he was 6, that he's 6 years old in these flashbacks? Is that what we're going with? Like, is that what he means by is the day he got rescued by Marva sort of the day he did join this fight?
I think it might have been even a little earlier than that. He looks kind of like he's 11. Or
he does look much older.
Yeah.
Right. And so my only concern though is it just really he dies in Rogue One at the age of 26.
Oh, okay.
And so if you put this back 5 years to when Andor is taking place, he'd be 21.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering how that he would literally have to be 6 or 7 here for the Galactic Republic to still be in place.
Interesting.
When those flashbacks are taking place. So maybe I didn't crunch the numbers as well as I'd hoped. I'm just trying to see if it actually flows, or if maybe there's a continuity error in the timeline. Who knows?
Well, he said he's been in this war since he was 6, right? Not that he was part of the rebellion.
Right.
He's been in this war since he was 6. So I think here it's safe to say he's probably around 10 or 11, right? Maybe at the youngest 9 or 8. Yeah. Right. But I think at the oldest 10 or 11. And I think definitely if it puts him at 21 and there's 5 years later, that kind of lines up. Like 10 years from that point of when he was found, he's lived this life with Marva and, stepfather. And
he aged quite a bit in those 10 years. Like, jeez. Yeah. I mean, he's an old-looking 21-year-old. I will say
that's what war, Kevin. That's what war
does to
kids.
Weathers you, bro. It weathers you.
All right. Well, obviously, we're doing a bit of prediction here for already, but I want to kind of get into any further predictions that it brings us to our prediction segments, and I think we're going to talk about. I want to ask you what you think will be revealed in the future of the series and its characters, and I will say, obviously we can't predict what's going to happen for episode 4 because we've already seen it, but I'm thinking bigger picture here. I want to know, even if you think it's a wild card prediction, and for this prediction segment, I'm going to call it, how many Bothans died to get us this information? So kind of a good throwback to Mon Mothma yet again. I was thinking, you could start off by saying like, a certain number of Bothans died to bring us this information, and my intel reads as... And then you say your prediction. Justin, why don't you kick us off? How many Bothans died to bring you the information?
Dude, I'm telling you, 85.
85?
Bothans died to bring you this information, bro. 85. Just, I can't believe it. The intel tells me that I think as much as this show is playing fast and loose with Easter eggs and being Star Wars-esque, I think there is something that we will get in these 12 episodes that will be a solidified reminder that it is Star Wars, whether, beyond just clone troopers and stormtroopers. Yep. I think we may get a peek at a character that is either of importance or will become of importance, whether it's the Emperor, whether it's Thrawn. I think that we will get something like that down the road, because I think inherently, yes, the show already with these first 3 episodes establishes it's sort of removed from all of that. They're the story about what happens based on the events of Jedis and Sith Lords and the Empire and all of the stuff that's going on in the galaxy. People are affected by it. But I think that there will be something that we will get later in these episodes that will definitely be like that. Oh yeah. You know what I mean? Just because it is playing pretty removed from it right
Leonardo
now.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
They just need to do one thing.
All the pointing at the screen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
exactly. But and it doesn't need to be something like, I think it's just more or less like, we could see the Emperor.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
That's
like,
what we get.
That would be something that we could see. Exactly. But I wouldn't turn down the opportunity to get our first look at Thrawn.
I mean, that's a big piece of information, and so I think, wow, it's certainly worth the sacrifice of the Bothans there. Yeah, that's a lot of Bothan death. I will say, I'd kind of go on the same page, but I'll stick to the light side. So only one Bothan died for this information. Yes,
that's not too bad.
Because my intel's a little shaky here, but I do think. We might see parts of actually the rebellion that we have become familiar with in the past. Obviously, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to know that Mon Mothma is coming to have a significant role in the show. But I also think a character from a movie that was actually better than Rogue One, at least according to our old movie combat battle. I think we might see. I would really like to see Emphy's Nest make an appearance here as we get that side of the rebellion. I think the timelines work really well.
Yeah.
I think that would be a cool.
That would be really cool,
shout. Yeah, so that's what I'm hoping for. So it's more of a hope than a prediction.
And I think, again, it goes with this idea of, like, the thing that's really refreshing about this show, as you guys were talking about in the spoiler-free, is that it feels so removed. It's not heavy on the Star Wars. Tony Gilroy has said, like, fan service wasn't really an important thing for him, right? It was really about just telling the story. And I think that, again, it doesn't need to be something huge. It could even just be a small little amount to bring it all together while still reminding us that it's, still in Star Wars, right? Like something that is that. Because I feel like we'll get more than just stormtroopers and clone troopers,
totally.
Right? So.
Okay. Listen, Justin, obviously you didn't do your job very well because you did not kill the informant because I obviously had the same informant as you did. So I think, what did you say, 85 Bothans? 85 Bothans
85.
Did die. And actually, you know what? The informant was a Bothan. I killed him now. So 86 Bothans died to bring me this information. Very similar to what you're talking about, dude. I think we've seen ISB agents wearing the traditional Empire Imperial outfits, and I think we've all been discussing offline how much we want Thrawn to show up at some point in this series. I think we brought up in our spoiler-free review that the show... or that I personally think I hope that the show will blend, as you're saying, its non-Star Wars feeling with traditional Star Wars slowly over time. We don't need a big hit of it, just slowly, a little bit. And with how political and serious this series, I think, will get, I think Thrawn is a perfect blend of what Star Wars fans want, as well as with what Tony Gilroy would want to write about. I think that's the character that if you showed Tony Gilroy all these different characters in Star Wars, he'd pick that one out and say, yes, this seems fitting for this series. And especially seeing how incompetent these different sections of the Empire have gotten during this time. They all think they're hot shit right now. Imagine having someone like Thrawn come in and just whoop some of their asses back in order to just be like, you are nothing. You mean nothing. And I think it would be so phenomenal. I was also doing some research, by the way. His species, the Chiss, apparently don't age at the same rate as humans. So according to the source material and Timothy Zahn's books, as well as Darcy, I've learned that his age during those books it's really fuzzy as to how old he is. So I think it's a perfect opportunity to say that in this, he's in his 40s, he's in his 50s, and he brings the Navy and he sets things in order. And I don't even want to get him in this season. You're right, Justin. Just give us a tease at the end of the 12 episodes. Give us like a blue-skinned hand putting his hand down on something, or just something where we see him look out into the stars. Very, very end of of New Hope in a way, right? With them looking out the stars. So I think that would be really cool. I don't know, man. I think that it would just be phenomenal to bring him in for the second season and then have it lead us perfectly into Ahsoka and her hunt for him. I think that's the perfect way to transition that character into Star Wars, but we'll see.
Timelines, for sure. Timeline's entirely different, though, right? Like, this is obviously well before, but if he's on the chase, if he's on the hunt for this rebellion and he's chasing after Andor in season 2 throughout those periods of time, that could work. You know what I mean? Because when we see Ahsoka, it's years
absolutely.
later,
but
right?
I'm saying Chiss don't age. So, like, to get audiences understanding of who Thrawn is, I think it would be so cool to be like, yeah, we're giving you Thrawn at this point in the galaxy, and then they can celebrate it again in Ahsoka when they're like, oh, well, you saw Thrawn in Andor. This is a different Thrawn than that Thrawn, and like they can play up the idea that he's a little older and he's kind of losing his mind a bit, or whatever you want to do. Like, I think it'd be really, really fun for them to have him as a thread throughout these next live action series.
Yeah, and you're almost better showing him at his prime before you sort of see him a little bit more unraveled, at least out of the animated context. So yeah, no, I think plus we get a few visual cues. Yeah, I'm just wondering if that is sort of our first sign of bigger things to come.
Okay, well, listen, I agree. Obviously in the trailers we've seen the ISB outfits that look very Thrawny. So hopefully, I think he'll show up. If not, then what did those 86 Bothans die for? All right, so it's about time we give our overall impressions for these first 3 episodes and our final score, which we're going to be rating on a scale of 1 to 5 stolen Star Path units. And this rating will be for all 3 episodes as a collective. We're not individually rating each episode. So it'll just be all 3 episodes. What's our rating? Justin, why don't you kick us off?
Well, I loved these first 3 episodes of Andor. They do so many things right and really do set things up for the rest of the series. And it establishes just how different this series is from everything we've gotten from Star Wars in the live-action series category. These 3 episodes, tonally, we see the gritty, grounded spy thriller that feels very Blade Runner, and it's mature with high-level stakes. The series is clearly going to be of importance, and it's going to tell the story about how the rebellion came to be and the key players that help to make that a reality. But more importantly, the series is about people and the people of the galaxy who are surviving and fighting the Empire collectively. It's clear that community and standing together are going to be constant themes that we'll see played out, and we'll see how far heroes will go to protect themselves and those around them. Now, that juxtaposed with the villains of the story, who clearly we're going to see them very much be the heroes of their own story, if you will, as they seemingly think that they're doing good, but they're doing good for the wrong side. I think this is something that is going to allow us as an audience to understand that things are not so black and white like we might have previously thought with Star Wars, given, Jedi and Sith Lords, but rather gray, as each side will do what they can to survive. And I think that is the series' biggest strength. Coming back to the cast, Diego Luna, he slips right back into the role of Andor, so natural. And just the entire cast, Stellan Skarsgård, Adria Arjona, Fiona Shaw, Kyle Soller, everyone is so committed to their characters. And if this is the level of acting that we're going to get from the rest of the series, then it's top tier Star Wars, man. Yeah, I loved everything about these first episodes, as I already said. There were pacing issues, but I'm going to forgive that because, more importantly, this show is so different. And it's not trying to keep Star Wars in a box. It's pushing the boundaries with its tone, and that in itself feels very groundbreaking for Star Wars. And I think that, pacing issues aside, I will forgive it because they are trying to do something different. And as we mentioned, the fact that the series is less concerned about fan service and more concerned about telling a story that is meaningful in a galaxy far, far away, I am so here for that, even though I think somewhere along the lines we may get some sort of hint at a pivotal Star Wars character, maybe like the Emperor. So all this to say, I'll be giving these first 3 episodes a 5 out of 5 stolen Star Path units. I know it's high, but honestly, I think these 3 episodes prove what is possible when you focus on the story you're trying to tell within the galaxy of Star Wars, rather than trying to make it be Star Wars. So huge shout out to Tony Gilroy and the entire creative team for taking a chance on this series, because it paid off. And I know we haven't seen all of this season, but right out the gate, these first 3 episodes do a lot to get me excited for the rest of the series. So it's a strong start. Yeah, 5 out of 5.
Wow.
Man. Totally down for more Andor.
Okay. Kevin.
Just towards the end there, you sort of touched on a couple things that I've been thinking about the show, you mentioned that bigger character that's part of the Star Wars lore that we already know. And I think what's incredible about the show is, while I do think we're going to get, even if it's just name drops, maybe we don't even see these bigger characters, although I just have a feeling we might. You don't need it, and that's the incredible thing here. And whereas these Disney Plus shows for the MCU have been doing it without those bigger name characters, those top tier Avengers and everything like that, the stakes have felt so much less because of it. Whereas here, you could not be further removed from the big Star Wars presence, the Jedi, your Darth Vaders, any of those characters, and yet it still feels so important, so consequential. These very, very ground level characters, the stakes do just feel so high. And I think that's the real strength of the show, is how important these characters and what they're doing, even though it is so minute when you think about the grand scale of this galaxy being controlled by the Emperor. It just feels so important, everything that's happening. And another brilliant thing they've done here is the releasing of these 3 episodes. It's so integral to watch these 3 episodes to start this journey. I think so much needs to happen in those 3 episodes to really set up what the story is going to be and some of the characters we're going to go on this journey with are. And so while there was a bit of a pacing issue, especially in that first episode where you're really waiting for things to get going and really trying to figure out what's happening, by the end of that 3rd episode, it is
It's all worth it.
just, almost 2 hours of the best, pure, original take on a Star Wars story that I think we've ever seen. And, so I'm going to give my score here first before sort of wrapping it up. And I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5 stolen Star Path units. A terrific start. I think it's only going to get better. I'm so excited to see where this goes. And hats off to Disney Plus and Star Wars and Tony Gilroy for getting me amped up for a prequel show that I really didn't think would do as much as it has for me already.
Very good. Wow, yeah. I you guys kind of said everything I could think. I think I said a lot of what I thought in our spoiler-free, but I'll pare it down for those who haven't listened to that. I think in our spoiler-free, I said that I wasn't as hot on these first 3 episodes, even though the ending of this 3rd episode was absolutely incredible. They do work together as a solid arc, as we're saying. Please watch them together. Them combined is a different quality than each episode on their own. I think the pacing is a slow burn, but the performances and ultimately the mature nature of the first 3 episodes and the way they give you more information about Cassian's past while also introducing us to these additional characters that honestly I can't wait to explore further. And that's the best part about this show, is it's called Andor, but these 3 episodes really show you why you're going to care for so many more characters than just Andor, and on both sides. So it's not just, it's and or, I'm trying to make an Andor joke.
Oh boy.
Jeez.
You finally squeezed
I
one in
figured
there.
it out.
Good
I
on
figured
ya.
it out.
Kudos.
It's not very good. But this show is much better than my jokes. And so I'm gonna give these first 3 episodes, which do explore these characters so well, a solid 4 out of 5 stolen Star Path units. All right, well, that is it for this week's episode of Watch Club for Lucasfilm and Disney's Andor. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts, if you haven't already. And if you want to write into the show with your thoughts or predictions on the shows we cover in Watch Club, hopefully not too many Bothans need to die for you to get this message to Justin. But Justin, can you let our Rebel listeners know the secret coordinates as to where they can reach us?
Yes, well, they can reach us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. But you can also hit us up on the back channels on Twitter at GeekcentricYT or on Instagram at wearegeekcentric.
On the HoloNet, the dark areas of the HoloNet, I think is what they call it in Star Wars. Keep in mind we have a ton of other episodes covering the latest and greatest shows and movies out now, as well as our interviews with the cast of this show that we've been talking about. As we mentioned earlier, we talked with Adria Arjona, who plays Bix Colleen, Kyle Solar, who plays Cyril Karn, who are both absolutely fantastic in these first 3 episodes. And then we also chatted with Genevieve O'Reilly, who plays Mon Mothma in the show, as well as Denise Goff, who plays Deidre Miro, who hopefully we'll all get to talk about in more detail sooner than later. Kyle and Denise share with me an incredible moment related to all the lights in my room. So that's one you're going to want to watch on YouTube for sure at youtube.com/geekcentric because we have a good giggly old time with them. We also recently sat down, speaking of a giggly old time, we sat down with Mater himself, Daniel Whitney, a.k.a. Larry the Cable Guy. And we also have our interview with Pinocchio's composer, Alan Silvestri, and songwriter Glenn Ballard. And we have an interview with Barbarian director Zach Kreger. So a ton of interviews. Plus, we have another Watch Club still ongoing for Marvel's She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. And we had interviews with the lead writer Jessica Gao and director Kat Coiro from She-Hulk as well. And we also have our weekly This Week in Geek episodes where we break down the latest in trailers and news every single Wednesday, usually every single Wednesday. But our latest episodes, we actually did sort of a 3-pack of episodes covering D23. And there was so much to go over. So if you want to listen to us gab on about all things Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, and Pixar, definitely check out those episodes. Had a really good time talking about the future of the parks as well in the Disney Parks panel conversation that we had. So much happening. Go give those episodes a listen and leave a 5-star review if you don't mind. Justin, Kevin, my wonderful rebel spies, thank you so much for joining me for this Watch Club. And as we say,
Rebellions are built on hope.